Prologue. The cairn afforded a view to die for. Crouched against the rock, jammed into its meagre shelter, Marianne gasped for breath. Below her stretched the world, or at least her part of it. "What do you reckon, dogs? Worth a climb?" On either side of her, Pip and Maggie lay bellies flat to the ground, ears slicked to their heads, emitting deep sighs which made their opinion clear. Anyone who chose that day to walk up Titterston Clee needed their head read. Even behind the rough stone pillar, the wind slammed at her, whipping her hair from its neat ponytail to sting her cheeks. On the ascent, it had gusted so hard she'd barely kept her feet. 4 legs coped better than 2, making her think of those poles that everyone seemed to walk with these days. She'd always despised them, but now she could see the appeal. Head down, she'd gritted her teeth, setting one foot in front of the other, clawing at the rocks to keep her balance and propel herself upwards, resisting the force of the gale as it drove her towards a 200-foot drop. Briefly, she'd considered turning back, scuttling down the precipitous path to the car park below, its surface so rutted with puddles it resembled a lunar landscape of lakes divided by small islets. Sheer stubbornness had forced her on. The landscape radiated menace. Below lay the abandoned quarry, a brutalist citadel of stark rock, its buildings almost indistinguishable from its excavation. A pair of crows jumped and flapped from column to column, excited perhaps by the skeleton of a sheep which lay on the scrubby grass. The wind keened a peculiar song, chasing and frothing the clouds from white to grey as they scudded over Brown Clee with its 2 peaks to the north. Murder Mountain, the locals called it, after the horrific case of the man who'd gone there with the sole intention of finding somewhere to kill. In the grip of psychosis, the expert witness had declared in court, his referral delayed, let down by a system that could no longer cope with the deluge of need. Greens and ochres rippled southward into the hazy Malverns, while to the west a darker spine showed behind the long Mynd. The jagged ridge of the Stiperstones, her country, crowned by the Devil's Chair. Further still lay Wales. On a clear day you could see Cadair Idris. Not today, though. The old devil was firmly in his chair, shrouding the far hills in charcoal grey. Rain on the way. She asked herself again why she had come. A need to be scoured clean by the wind and rocks, perhaps, to endure the Clee's desolation. To be entirely alone. No guests to serve, no little request to meet or politely fend off, no one under her feet. Nothing but rocks and grass and sky. And sheep. There were a few now on the lower slopes towards the common, wise enough to seek shelter, leaving the stark majesty of Titterston Clee to her. She saw no other humans on the hill, though she knew they must be there. Her Subaru didn't have the car park to itself. As she'd rattled over the cattle grid, 2 figures had got out of a Land Rover and made for the path which led up towards the radar station. A man and a boy. Father and son, perhaps. Beside another car, small and red, a few puddles away from where she'd parked, a couple had been arguing. The woman's coat had caught her attention. A light blue so bright it seemed superimposed on the rock behind. Ridiculously clean for a waterproof. New, maybe. Her own was old and well worn, grubby even. Both had hoods up, their bodies forming a rigid frame like an out-of-place Argentine tango. Perhaps one was pointing out to the other the ridiculousness of walking in such an exposed spot on a day like this. Young, she thought, or younger than her anyway by some years. She'd watched them for a while, resenting how they intruded on her need for solitude. The very least they could have done was set off, like the man and boy, and continued their argument elsewhere. In the end she had locked the Subaru and made for the path, eyes averted, avoiding the usual walker's greeting. With fingers almost too numb to undo the zip, she tugged a water bottle from her small backpack and took a swig. Taking her movement as a sign, the dogs scrambled to their feet, heads cocked, ears and tails low against the wind. Pip gave a muted whine. She wondered whether she should put them on leads to stop them from going too near the edge of the quarry, but remembered the comparative ease with which they descended the slope. Maybe they should attach a lead to her. The descent was no easier than the climb. After a few hundred yards, buffeted on all sides, blinded by stray strands of hair, her thighs began to pull and her shins ached. She envied the dogs their four-pawed agility and concentrated on keeping to the rough track, avoiding the rubble-strewn patches where long-deserted huts had once stood. To her left and below loomed the white domes of the radar station, balanced like giant ping-pong balls on their concrete columns. The squat grey building between them was desolate, a Cold War relic or some derelict television drama set from the 1970s. The lowest white dome perched on the edge of the quarry, flanked by a mast, interlocking struts of metal twisted now with age. She had no idea if the station was still active. In all her visits she had never seen any activity except walkers. A hard gust almost knocked her off her feet and she caught her breath, clutching at a rock for balance. 200 feet below sprawled the grass floor of the quarry pit, as wide as it was deep, and at one end a sheltered pool of green water, still and silent. It would have been no surprise to see a hand rise from its depths, holding a sword aloft. Beautiful. Man-made, a scar on the land, but beautiful nonetheless. Like stretch marks on a mature woman. Evidence that she has given birth to something, that from her has sprung life. A flash of colour on the other side of the quarry wall caught her eye. A movement of bright blue turquoise. The dog stiffened and stared, traced its progress down past the furthest mast, leaping in wild onward bounds. The young woman from the car park was running down towards the road, arms outstretched for balance, as though the devil was on her heels. Of her companion, there was no sign.